Hey friends, it's Claire. First, we don't have an episode for you last week, and now we had the wrong microphone set up for this episode. So you might find that the audio quality is, as they say, wanting. I'm so sorry about that. If you can find it in your hearts to forgive us, please enjoy the show. This episode is going to be a shriekingly good time!
Ah!
I'm Claire.
And I'm Vince.
And this is Friends of Legend! Welcome to Friends of Legend, a podcast where we offer a refreshingly different perspective on misunderstood creatures in the magic sphere.
Like a cup of peppermint tea.
Ooh, I love peppermint tea.
Me too.
This friend was requested by a very good friend of ours, Thomas, who is starting medical school in El Paso very soon. Or now?
Congratulations, Thomas.
Congratulations, Thomas. Thank you so much for sending this one in. Today we're going to be talking all about the misunderstood creature, the banshee.
Oh, that's fun. I know the name, and I know what it does, but that's about all I know.
That's kind of what a lot of people know about it. They associate the banshee with terrible noises in the middle of the night, but a lot of people don't quite understand the motive of the banshee. So overall, banshees are Irish female spirits who herald the death of either you or a family member by wailing or shrieking. And I know that we've done a lot of Northern European friends in our catalog of episodes, but trust us, we are going to get to other parts of the world very soon.
Yeah, and if you have one in particular you want to suggest us, our inbox is always open.
It sure is. So first I'm going to talk about the banshee's appearance. Banshees can be found in usually one of two forms. They can either be tall, slender, and beautiful spectral figures, usually a beautiful younger woman, or they can appear as a small old crone. And I'm talking, sometimes these crones are as small as 1 foot tall.
Huh, okay.
There are some variations in the details. Usually you'll see them with long streaming hair that kind of floats all around them because they're ghostly and gravity doesn't affect them. And their hair might either be white or sometimes it's red. They're usually dressed in silver or white robes that are often tattered, and some of the banshees have red eyes from constantly weeping.
Aw, poor things.
Yeah. So as far as what the banshee does, she warns the living of an impending death by screaming, shrieking, bitterly crying. She can clap, or they can do what's called keening, which is really just a form of mournful wailing, and I'll talk all about keening a little later.
So kind of like a spooky, spectral Yoko Ono.
Oh gosh, yeah, you can think of her like that. The banshee usually will make this awful sound a bit before someone's death in your family, sometimes up to 3 days before, or she can do it upon the death. But also, she can very usefully emit this cry at your family home to bring the news of a death that occurred far away before you hear the news from someone else.
Oh, well, that's confusing.
It can be, but the banshee is seen as a very useful creature in family homes, so she can help you to prepare for a demise in the family, and she's not seen as a nuisance as much as a huge help.
I guess that's one way to look at it. Well, good on them for seeing the bright side.
Oh, yeah. So another name for the banshee is Bankincha, which translates in Irish Gaelic to keening woman. So that's where you get the ban, or the bon, part.
I'll give people a peek behind the curtain. I did kind of glance at your notes, and I thought it was Beanchincha.
Yeah, Irish is a really tricky language to pronounce. So YouTube is our friend. Banshees are solitary creatures who usually associate only with one family, and it's typically a family of great wealth or a noble family, and it's always going to be in Ireland. As far as the banshee goes, I'll talk about variations of the banshee later, but this specific creature will only serve Irish families.
So you might be working up to this, but is it the spirit of an ancestor from that family, or is it completely separate of that and they just kind of insert themselves into the lives of an Irish family?
Oh yes, in fact, some banshees have taken the appearance of a deceased ancestor, usually someone who died young in the family, most likely by some violent cause.
Ah, beans.
So it can be sort of a nice remembrance to see an ancestor of yours. But the circumstances are never great, of course.
Yeah, it sounds a little traumatic, to be honest.
I should say so. The Irish definitely have a very impressive and interesting way of dealing with death. It's not a taboo topic in Ireland like it might be in some places where we're very sensitive to talk about it. The Irish accept this natural part of life, and they have lots of ways of dealing with death, and the banshee is just a part of that.
Okay, well that's a good way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned that banshees typically serve Gaelic nobility, but they most commonly associate with families descended from the Milesian race of Gaels, whose surnames often begin with O, Mick, or Mac.
Right, usually they denote either ancestry or place names, right?
Correct. And my last name, Haney, is derived from the old Irish O'Hainahe, so maybe my family back in Ireland has their own banshee.
That'd be fun.
That would be fun. So the banshee will appear at nighttime, sometimes even to the servants of the household, or even at the family home that has been since torn down or destroyed. She can appear at the ruins themselves, which is not super helpful, but it's where she knows to go.
Interesting that they'd choose there to hang out if their whole thing is to warn people who are living in a place that's lived in.
Right. I wonder if it's a bit of confusion on the ghost's part. They might kind of pop up there and then say, oh no, they moved, and then go to where they are currently. There have been some rarer times when several banshees will appear together, but that's to indicate the death of a holy figure or an icon.
A banshee jamboree.
Oh, that sounds like a cool song for Halloween time.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, banshees became less common in the 16th and 17th centuries when the English took control of many parts of Ireland, because banshees couldn't or wouldn't serve English families. You know, they only stick to the Irish. They're loyal to the Irish. So when you had mixed blood families, part English, part Irish, part something else, it's a no-go for you. No banshee for you.
Ghost politics.
Oh yeah. They are strict in their rules. Some banshees are named after the families they serve. There's a Bunworth banshee and a MacArthur banshee that are written about in Irish folklore. So often they're just considered a part of the family. So I want to talk a little bit about where the banshees got their start. So the name banshee comes from the Irish term woman of the fairy mound or fairy woman. And the mound is referring to burial mounds that are made of earth and stone that you can see kind of across the Irish countryside.
Okay, kind of like that Tomb of Crom in Secret of Kells.
Yeah.
Oh.
Secret of Kells, made by the same creators that did
Song of the Sea.
Song of the Sea that we talked about in the Selkie episode. Watch them both. While we can't really know for sure where each individual banshee comes from because she doesn't really stick around to chat with you, it is thought that many banshees were women in their mortal lives who had great injustices done to them, such as being the victims of violence and murder.
That sounds like a less scary version of the ghost from The Grudge, or Ju-on.
As far as the very beginnings of the banshee, many speculate that banshees harness the power of Catabodva, which is the Celtic battle goddess worshipped long ago, who could predict the death of certain renowned warriors with a piercing cry. She could also shapeshift into a crow, which some banshees can do, and I didn't really get a lot of information about that, but it's super cool.
That's super neat, and also kind of lends more credence into why crows are associated with death.
Right, yeah. So many believe that the spirit of the goddess Catabodva has been passed on to the banshees to make them do what they do. As far as the sound that I told you a lot of banshees make, the keening, that goes back to an Irish ritualistic wailing that was used professionally to lament death, and it goes back all the way to the 8th century Ireland. And it was seen as a necessary ritual to pass the dead on to the afterlife or the other world.
It definitely sounds cathartic.
Yes. So the women who practiced keening were called keeners, and they guided mourners at funerals and post-funeral through their grief. And it really helped the mourners to find closure, to have this kind of link between the mortal world and the afterworld.
And now I know you, being the professional you are, have definitely prepared a sample of keening for the audience, right?
Oh. I couldn't actually find sound samples on the internet, which is probably for the best, but you can imagine it's probably a very guttural, wailing sound.
Like Harry when he gets put up after he's been naughty.
Yeah, like... something like that, maybe. We don't really have keeners in our modern world, but they were a very important part of society in the day. Keeners could kind of get away with dismissing some social customs, so you might see them traveling barefoot through the countryside, and they might have had kind of ragged clothes and their hair disheveled, which goes back to the appearance of the common banshee, where she's got the streaming hair that is going all over the place, and she's got the tattered robes. So, it is most likely that banshees are the ghosts of keeners, if not the ghosts of ancestors of the noble families.
Okay. I can see the plausibility of that.
Right. And I know you were probably wondering, why is it just the noble families that get this very important service? Well, back in the day, only the wealthy could afford the services of a keener. So that explains why banshees are loyal to certain noble families.
It's a high price to pay to get all that yelling and moaning.
Right, I guess so. And some say that because certain keeners accepted alcohol as payment as opposed to gold, they were considered sinners and were punished by becoming banshees when they died.
Aw, beans.
Yeah.
We'll scream for beer.
I mean, at least they were good at their craft, and they could do it on into the afterlife. So there are other variants to the banshee in other parts of the British Isles. In Scotland, they've got a creature called the banshee, which translates to little washerwoman, and this is a spectral creature who can often be seen washing the blood-stained clothes or armor of those who are about to die.
Valuable service.
In Wales, there is a creature called the cries, who is seen making terrible groaning sounds similar to the banshee, but she makes them 3 times, each time becoming a little bit weaker until the death of someone in your family, or sometimes when a shipwreck is about to occur.
Huh.
Yeah. Now, some people might be wondering, how do I avoid this creature who makes an ear-piercing shriek or a haunting wail in the night? Well, fear not. Banshees don't cause death. They only warn of it. So, if she comes to you, there's nothing you can do about what's about to happen. You can only thank her for warning you and preparing you for the worst.
That's fair.
Some banshees are very hate-filled creatures that carry a lot of grief with them, but many feel very protective over the families that they belong to, and they watch over them. And even if they can't really protect them as far as warding off their enemies, you know that someone's watching your back, and that you're never alone. That you're never quite alone when the banshee's around.
Comforting.
The purest banshees of heart may actually sing a beautiful and haunting song, as opposed to screaming and crying to a family member to warn of the death. But those who lived very burdened lives with a lot of hate and violence will likely become a bit more of a terrifying version of the banshee, and their screams may be confused for celebration of a death.
More reason to treat the women in your family well.
Exactly. Yeah, and if nothing else, it at least might drive you crazy if every time your relative dies, you hear cackling and happy screaming. Yeah, that sounds pretty macabre to me.
Unpleasant.
Oh, yeah.
I guess another way you can avoid the negative aspects of a banshee that you didn't mention is to be poor.
Yeah.
Or not Irish.
I don't think that's going to be too hard to do. Only the purest of the Irish need worry. But really, I think the best way to overcome your fear of the banshee is to kind of just come to grips with the fact of death and realize that banshee's on your side. Or as long as, she's not a hateful one, she'll still help you out by preparing you, but she might do so in a mocking way. But I digress. As far as banshees in popular culture today, there was a show on Cinemax that ran for a few seasons called Banshee, but that show was not really about the creature as much as it was named after a fictional town in Amish country in Pennsylvania. So that's that, in case anyone saw the name on a TV guide and were wondering if it was about the creature.
Womp womp.
In Supernatural, there's an episode where a family encounters a very angry banshee whose screams drive the humans crazy to the point of bashing their own heads in. And then the banshee in that show will eat their frontal lobe, specifically.
Yum.
Talk about misrepresented in media. In Harry Potter, there's several mentions of the banshee. There's a Defense Against the Dark Arts class where a boggart turns into a banshee. And of course that one's driven away by laughter, so that doesn't really go with the canon. Gilderoy Lockhart claims that he defeated the abandoned banshee, but he didn't really, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill Weasley suggests that wearing earmuffs will protect you from the banshee's cries, kind of like mandrakes.
Okay.
But I don't know if they would necessarily kill you in this world. In Teen Wolf, one of the main characters has banshee abilities, but she is, as far as I could tell, a human character. She's definitely living, and her abilities cause her to hear voices in her head, which lead her to murder scenes. So I saw some scenes where she was screaming when she was about to be murdered, but she's not really a true ghostly banshee.
Meh.
So that's that. I mean, leave it to teen dramas to spice up the lore of beasties. Twilight, I'm looking at you. And of course, I was happy to find out that there are banshees in RuneScape that you have to wear earmuffs in order to even think of defeating.
Okay. And lest you think that I was not going to talk about Pokemon on this podcast, there is a Pokemon inspired by the Banshee. It's the Pokemon Misdreavus from the second generation. It's depicted as sort of like a woman's ghostly head with a necklace of red pearls. Misdreavus likes to scream and wail at people, but only for the lulz. It doesn't warn people of imminent death. It likes to scare humans by screaming or crying or wailing at them, or sometimes biting their hair.
Ah!
And then it'll store their shrieks of terror in its little red pearls.
Oh, that reminds me of Monsters, Inc., the scream canisters.
Just like that.
That's fun.
And it's very cute.
Aw, I think I remember that one. So I'm sure you're wondering, Claire and Vince, how are you going to become friends with a banshee? But that's a very good question, because they don't really stick around long enough to make friends with you. They are ghosts, so they come and go as they please, but really it's less about their will and more about their duty. They'll appear to you when they are carrying out their job.
They're here for business.
Mm-hmm. So by the time you're visited by your banshee, she is already set in her ways. She has her set disposition. So it's not really up to you if she's going to be benevolent or malevolent. Benevolent or malevolent. Because it all has to do with how she was treated in her life, or sometimes even the deeds she carried out. It is suggested that some women who were criminals may be doomed to become a banshee in the afterlife. But either way, you can only hope that you had an ancestor in your family who died young from non-violent situations. Many banshees became that way because they died during childbirth. So, while very sad, that is a likely situation in which you might have a nicer banshee who might sing to you instead of screaming in your ear. What a terrible way to wake up.
Yeah, the best part of waking up are banshees in your cup.
I'm leaving that in.
Oh.
The banshee's not going to harm you, like I said, except for probably the worst thing, bursting your eardrums or rattling you a bit. But if you know that you have a banshee in the family, you're just going to have to get used to the idea.
Or move away.
Or move away, because it sounds like they're not the best trackers. Now, I can imagine if I had a family banshee, I would probably hear any form of high-pitched shrieking or beeping or anything coming from the city around us and think, oh my gosh, that's a banshee! Talk about paranoia. I hope that doesn't happen all the time in Ireland.
Yeah, it would make for stressful home life.
Yeah. And I feel really bad that banshees are so horribly misrepresented in pop culture, but I don't actually think they care too much. I think they're well beyond that.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just here for the job.
Mm-hmm. But I certainly think that we should do our part to respect them and thank them for their never-ending duty.
Thank you, Banshees.
Thank you, Banshees. Thank your local Banshee today. So now we are on to the rating part of the show. If you've never listened, welcome. We have a 4-tiered rating system to describe how easy it is to become friends with our featured creature. Heh, I like that. The first tier is friend-shaped. This is a super easy friend to get along with. Very easygoing, like a gnome.
The second tier is cheeky friend. Not difficult to become friends with, but also comes with extra goofs and spoofs.
The third tier is spicy friend. They might be a little dangerous, but with patience and determination, you can get on their good side. Like Baba Yaga.
And the last tier is not a friend yet. No real record of anyone having become friends with them. Usually contact results in bad things.
So before I talk about my rating, I want to hear yours for the Banshee.
Well, I was thinking about it. The only thing that really makes sense to me is cheeky friend, because they're not out to do physical harm. That being said, the uninitiated screaming would be, at the very least, a nuisance.
Yeah, it sounds really hard to get past the trauma of just the screaming, just the shock. But I agree with you. I gave the Banshee the cheeky friend rating. They're considered a part of the family wherever they serve, and I wish I had a better descriptive word than cheeky to describe the Banshee.
I think we might need to add another tier, something like sad friend for...
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
For the Selkies and
right,
the Banshees.
Right. We might need to. But that, just having that tier in regular episodes would also kind of be sad. Banshees, we want you to know that there are people in the mortal world rooting for you. And you are officially dubbed Cheeky Friend.
Welcome to the fold, with such members as imps.
You're on the imp level. Not such a bad thing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode about Banshees. Remember, if you liked what you heard today, you can subscribe to our show on whatever directory you use and rate us. It would really be appreciated.
Also, if you got the time, visit our website, friendsoflegend.com, where you can see our full host of episodes, read frequently asked questions, and even submit ideas for new episodes.
And Vince has been starting to write up our transcripts, so if you know someone who is hard of hearing but loves a good podcast, then they can get the almost full experience by looking at the transcripts on our website.
And we're also on social media. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, where we regularly post updates on the show. Usually on Fridays, you can find a hint on what the creature of tomorrow will be.
We would love to have you in our community.
Yes.
New episodes are up every Saturday, so stay tuned. And we're sorry that we didn't have an episode last Saturday. We had some issues with our schedule, but we're happy to be back.
Absolutely. Gotta bring the good word.
Thank you so much again for listening. And remember, when it comes to Friends of Legend, charm them.
Do not harm them.